Chapter 8. Have you ever been hypnotized? Not that I know of. You would know. Not if there was a post-hypnotic suggestion like, you will not remember being hypnotized or something like that. Truth. Good point. Why do you ask? I want to hypnotize you. Lay still. Listen to my voice. I listen to your voice all day. This will be different. How? You'll be in a trance. You'll travel through time to past lives. You'll speak deep truth from the subconscious mind. I don't think that works on me. Not if you keep messing around, girl. Lay still. Okay, but shh. Breathe in. Breathe out. Let go of the tension in your forehead. Let go of the muscles in your legs. Feel your mind become pure energy. Feel your body feel the light. He stroked my face, speaking softly, whispering me into a deeply meditative state. He liked to call it hypnosis, and it was a kind of hypnotic spell, I think, but not like a Vegas act or clinical stop-smoking type of hypnosis. The first time he tried it on me, I couldn't stop giggling, but then I gave myself over to it, and I liked it. I closed my eyes and watched the natural kaleidoscope inside my eyes. Tell me your name. Mayte. Princess Mayte? Yes. Where are you? Cairo. What are you doing? Waiting. For what? For you. When I was in this altered state, as we went there more and more often, I could answer his questions without weighing whether I should tell the truth. I could spin long Scheherazade-style stories that seemed to come from a part of my brain I'd never accessed before. In those clear, quiet hours just before dawn, I'd lay beside him, completely relaxed, no ballerina mask hiding my emotion, no showgirl costume telling me who I was supposed to be. I'd let myself go and freely speak to him. It was weirdly therapeutic for both of us. This was the only time he'd let me talk without interrupting me. He listened, 100% attentive, and I felt safe. There was an absence of the whipped cream paycheck power imbalance. Whatever came to light, there was no blame or shame or lack of faith. Sometimes it felt like a child's game. Sometimes it was a connection even deeper than sex. Have we known each other before? Many times. Where? Many places. How did we find each other? Before your soul set off to live its first lifetime on Earth, my soul said to your soul, we need a plan, so you'll recognize me when you see me. Everywhere you look, you'll see reminders. At first you'll think it's coincidence. Then you'll know it's fate. Together we explored universes and lifetimes and emotional truth. Under his hypnosis, I could finally speak about the family I wanted to create, forgiving and trusting, not like my family, and that's something I couldn't say to him in real time. When he was ready to bring me back, he'd snap his fingers next to my ear and say, when you wake up, you'll know that you're loved and safe and warm. Afterward, he'd tell me what I'd said, and he never tried to alter my words or use them against me. This gave him a way to tell me everything he couldn't say in real time. It gave him a way to be honest with me about the family he wanted to create, about his fears and struggles. He could speak about other women in his life and what they meant to him, knowing that I wasn't going to pop off or judge. We still loved the simple act of hanging out together, watching old black and white movies and talking about the mysteries of the universe and the unexplainable power of love. These long conversations had deepened to a more spiritual level as we became closer. He asked me about the angels in the room, and I described them in detail. We talked about the possibility of our two souls having met before and where that might have happened. He was fixated on the idea of Egypt then, maybe because of the music taking shape in his head, and sometimes the music took shape because of the conversations. He once wrote to me, whenever I imagine what my work would look like had I not met you, I must admit, it's quite a different picture. It's not better or worse. It's different. I regret nothing except whenever I've made a compromise because I felt you wouldn't understand. I know that you don't mean to make me feel that way, but there again, it's a fact. I accept it as a very reason I must love you, because I care about your feelings. In the past, I could do a movie and kiss the leading lady and not care about what another woman would think. That's what time it was. But these are the people I'm not with today. What words do I use to make you realize what you mean to me? If I imagine holding another, it would only reinforce the fact that no one fits my arms the way you do. During those years, our chemistry on stage combined with our chemistry in private, and the result was something neither of us anticipated. We incorporated props and set pieces and costumes, as if we were performing an opera. We didn't know where any given idea would take us. We just kept going with it, working the choreography that gave the music a story we could communicate to an audience, and people loved it. In 1994, there was no official tour, and in 1995, there was only the Ultimate Live Experience tour in Europe, but we were always working. During those 2 years, in addition to recording 3 albums, Come, the Black Album, and the Gold Experience, New Power Generation did hundreds of one-off concerts, dance parties, after shows, and television appearances. Prince and I talked a lot about music, but we didn't talk much about the music business in those early years. I was his oasis from all that. I'm not sure I would have understood it at the time anyway. One of his crew people told me years later, everything was great until Purple Rain. Then he got everything he wanted, and he didn't like it. That made sense from my perspective. The Warner Brothers situation was brewing and getting closer to the surface. The basic issue was a dispute over when and how Prince's music should be released. He had a strategy that didn't jibe with the labels, and it bothered him that someone else had the clout to tell him when he could and could not put his own music out there. He didn't have a personal beef with anyone at the label, or with the idea of record labels in general. He recognized that record labels are great for most artists. But Prince wasn't like most artists. He had his own massive studio where he could do anything the label's studio could do. He needed the relationship for distribution, and he was becoming more and more uncomfortable with what he had to give up on his side of the deal: commercial control of his music. When he recorded under the umbrella of the record label, they owned the master, the physical finished version of that song. In Prince's thinking, the logical counterpart to master was slave. This all came to a head in 1994 because of a disagreement over when to drop the Symbol album and in what order the singles should be released. The studio wanted to release 7 as the first single. He wanted My Name is Prince first. Ultimately, they did go with what he wanted, but My Name is Prince only got to 36 on the Billboard Hot 100. 7 rocketed to the top 10 and peaked, coincidentally, at number 7. I don't think that he was bothered by the fact that this made it seem like they were right and he was wrong. It was the fact that the decision was open to discussion at all. He felt he'd earned the right to call those shots, and from my perspective now, I have to agree with him. One day I rode to Warner Brothers in a limo with him because he was going to a meeting that had him feeling stressed. I waited in the car, making a few calls. When he came out, he had Slave written on the right side of his face. "So, that went well," I said, hoping to make him smile. "It definitely changed the tone of the meeting," he said. Honestly, even now, I have only a general idea of what this was all about, and at the time I was completely confused by it. But I could tell there was something weighing on him when he came home from the Act 1 tour. He hadn't told me the details of all that yet. He did say that he'd signed a $100 million deal for 10 albums, which was a lot more than some other major stars were getting. He was a long way from delivering the 10 albums and already beginning to feel trapped, because he had this mountain of unreleased material in the vault, but they wouldn't let him release it. He said an exclusivity clause in his contract meant he couldn't just go off and be a member of someone else's band, an idea that made him happy in theory. So he developed a character called Tora Tora, who had a whole life of his own. When you see him with a scarf or a veil or chains over his face, that's Tora Tora. And in the middle of all this, MTV kept asking him to do Unplugged. And he really wanted to do it, but, again, there was no negotiating ownership of the master. During a rare moment of downtime, I invited Mama to bring Henna up for a visit. I didn't tell Prince that Mama was in town because he would have thought it was rude to call me to come over while she was visiting, and I didn't want him not to call me to come over. One afternoon, when I hadn't seen him for a few days, he called me sounding overwhelmed and sad, not saying much but not wanting me to hang up. "What's wrong?" I kept asking. "Nothing." "Should I come over?" "No," he said. "I'm sick. I don't look good." "I don't care about that." "I care." He sounded hollowed out and foggy, and that scared me a little. He didn't get sick very often, and this felt different. We sat together on the phone without talking for a while, and then I said, "Hey, remember Henna? That little dog you saw in my dressing room in Florida? She's visiting me. Let me bring her over. She'll cheer you up." I wasn't at all sure this was true, but I'd hoped it would be, and it was the only way in I could think of at that moment. Prince surprised me when he said, "Yeah, bring her over." I hustled Henna in her car carrier and booked over there as fast as I could. I was startled when I saw him. He was in his pajamas, which wasn't totally unusual at the hour of the afternoon, but he kept his eyes away from mine. He seemed vulnerable and weirdly loopy. "Are you all right?" I asked. "Yeah, not feeling well." I want to be clear. In all the years we were together, I never actually saw Prince doing drugs. He didn't want me to see it. I'm sure he knew what my reaction would be. I didn't drink or do any kind of drugs, and I didn't want that in my life. I knew Prince loved port wine, but he wasn't a big consumer of anything except sex and music as far as I knew. He had a black bag that always seemed to be close at hand, like a gym bag. Not too man-pursy, but the contents were pretty tame. Candy, vitamins, makeup, a Bible, and a big wad of cash. He had incredible amounts of money, and he always seemed to have plenty on him so he could send people off to get whatever it was he needed. He was still young, in his mid-30s, and never complained about fatigue or pain. Sometimes on tour he got vitamin B12 shots, and so did I. For me, that was enough to keep my energy and immune system up to the task of traveling and performing. I never had any trouble sleeping because I was dog-tired. I thought it was the same for him. But there were a few disturbing incidents that happened while we were together, and this is one of the several occasions when he told me he was sick or that he had a migraine. Looking back, I can see it was something else. I didn't see it then, maybe because I didn't want to. I set Henna down, and she wagged over to him, wanting to love him on pure instinct. We sat quietly for a while. Every now and then she'd put her paw on his face and nuzzle his hand, and eventually he brought her up to his lap. "You should go," he said. "I don't want to get you sick." "Are you sure?" "Yeah, but do you mind if she hangs out for a while?" "Sure," I said. "I can come and feed her in the morning, but you'll need to take her out later." "Yeah, we'll be cool." The next morning when I arrived to feed Henna, Prince seemed like himself again, but I could tell he'd had a long night. He rubbed Henna's head and said, "She's an angel. No matter how bad I was feeling, she'd come and put her paw on me." "She's very intuitive," I said. He nodded. It gave me a whole new respect for dogs. "Will you be all right if we leave?" I asked. "Oh, sure, of course. But hold up a minute." He handed me a sealed envelope. "I need you to take this to the office." When I took the envelope, I didn't ask what was in it. I guess he could see the curiosity and concern in my face. "Don't worry about it," he said. "It's just in case. Just take it to them. They'll know what to do." This was not the only time he asked me to do that, and on each of those occasions I got a distinct vibe that the envelope, which I never opened, of course, had something to do with the future of his music. That's why it was so strange to me when I read that he died without a will. I know for a fact that he was on top of his business concerns and did think about a time when someone else would be curating his creative life's work. He wrote to me, "This year I grew up. Part of me wants to be alone for a while, not away from you, just alone with me. There's a difference. Wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, I always think of you. Always. Hypno paradise. I'd like to go away and make serious plans for the future. I've never felt so adult in my life. Now, there are a lot of things I have to deal with. My Paris apartment, the property on Melrose I pay rent monthly on, the love for one another concept, the renting or sale of the LA house, since we'll be on tour. I hope you can grow up a little more with me as well, because I'm going to need your support as much as your love these next few months. We've gone through so much together, and yet it seems like we've just started. I look forward to everything. In an effort to throw him a bone, apparently, Warner Brothers allowed him to release a single as a one-off aside from his contract. The Most Beautiful Girl in the World is a song that was particularly important to him. I know of at least 3 women besides me who believe it was written specifically for them. I hope every woman who hears it thinks it was written specifically for her. Because it was. Take a look at the music video. You won't see me in it. You'll see a collage of girls and women of every age, race, and body type. This was his love song to all of us. There's a nervous bride, a woman sweating through childbirth, women working, women mothering, women making a difference. A gorgeous black woman, played by Nona Gay, is elected President of the United States. A fabulous redhead slays on stage and then drags off a carefully styled wig to show her actual close-cropped hair. At the end, we see education pioneer Marva Collins, a teacher who used her retirement savings to start a small school for low-income black children labeled Learning Disabled by the Chicago public school system. Set against this song, it's undeniable every one of them, every one of you, is perfectly and uniquely stunning. This kind of beauty has got no reason to ever be shy. This kind of beauty is the kind that comes from inside. It was a pivotal moment in his career because he was able to release the single as an independent artist on his own new MPG label in a distribution partnership with Adele in Europe. Yeah, that Adele. Too dramatic, right? The single was an international hit, his first UK #1 hit, the only one during his lifetime, and #3 on Billboard's Hot 100 in the United States. With this one song, he was able to prove that he had the answer to the big question everyone kept asking when he talked about living outside a label. What about distribution? The song was remixed for the Gold Experience album, released by MPG with Warner Brothers, but the handwriting was on the wall. With the successful release of the single, he had proven that it was possible and important for an artist to take ownership of his or her work, creatively and commercially, and he was already reaching out to artists like Chaka Khan to jump ship and follow him. The Most Beautiful Girl in the World was the first recording officially credited to Symbol instead of Prince, and this threw people for a loop. In 1999, he told Larry King, "I had searched deep within my heart and spirit, and I wanted to make a change and move to a new plateau in my life. And one of the ways I did this was to change my name. It sort of divorced me from the past and all the hang-ups that go along with it." Suddenly, people didn't know how to refer to him in the media. They came up with the artist formerly known as Prince, which he didn't love because to him, it felt like a cheat. Some people tried to shorten that to Taft Cap, and he particularly hated that because it was a double cheat. It's interesting to see how people wrap their heads around it, or not, and how their handling of it reflects how they feel about artists in general. I mean, is that allowed? Do we get to play with entity and identity that way? But I think that's exactly what he intended. I think he wanted to take it from your mouth and place it in your mind, or take it from your mind and place it in your heart. Instead of verbalizing a word inside your head, maybe he wanted you to feel something that was uniquely him, to breathe in both artist and art and be with that for just a split second. So I would ask you to bear with me and do that here so I can honor his wishes. Up to this moment, he was Prince from 1993 to 2000. Legally, professionally, creatively, and spiritually, he was Symbol. Prince's decision to have his name legally changed to Symbol was a much bigger deal for the rest of the world than it was for us. As our relationship evolved over the years, the man I knew was always separate in my heart and mind from the stage persona, so I'd never addressed him as Prince anyway. He once told Oprah, "I'd drop my tea if I heard Prince coming from the kitchen." People kept asking me, "But what do you call him?" And the truth is, I didn't call him anything. Every once in a while I'd call him Hun or Honey, which made him laugh for some reason, or I'd call out, "Hey," which also amused him because his stepdad's name was Hayward. Most of the time, if I was still and looked at him for more than a second or two, he'd turn to look at me. Perhaps that connection is how the unpronounceable is pronounced. It's a look, a touch, a stillness. And it went both ways, even after we were no longer together. One night after a divorce, I was at the Sayers Club, a club in LA, and I felt him standing behind me. I turned to look for him, but I didn't see him. I did notice, though, that the guitar pedals were set up exactly the way he liked them. Someone told me later that he'd come in to jam with the band that night, but when he saw me sitting there, he didn't feel like playing. His given name was Prince, so he didn't mind when his longtime friends and family called him that. But Prince, the recording artist owned by Warner Brothers, was someone else entirely. And the artist formerly known as Prince was something the media invented, because that was the easiest way to talk about him. He didn't want it to be easy for them. He wanted to make people think about their own identity and about the people they idolize and the concept of being and doing whatever peanut butters your jelly. He wanted people to know he had changed. In the Bible, he said, what happens when a person changes? God changes their name. Abram became Abraham. Sarai became Sarah. Jacob wrestled with the angel of the Lord and became Israel. Prince opened the original Glam Slam nightclub in Minneapolis in 1989, so he'd have a place to go when he wanted to go nightclubbing without causing a stampede or when he wanted to jam with people he liked. The place was named after a song on the Loved Sexy album. And over the next several years, he opened up Glam Slams in Los Angeles, Miami, and Yokohama. After the Act 2 tour, he asked me to help him reimagine the Glam Slam experience in Minneapolis with a concept we called Erotic City. He gave me a lot of fantastic unreleased music to work with, and I created vignettes and hanging ladders that appeared to be standing into space. A go-go dancer in a bird cage and a huge scrim where tricks of light created suggestive silhouettes and reality-bending projections. Dancers came down from the ceiling and through the walls. I did a whole thing with a chandelier on my head. In mid-January 1994, I filmed the show and flew to LA where he was working at the moment, staying at a house he'd bought on Heather Way. We watched the show together, and he was very excited about it. Afterward, he needed to go back to the studio, but I was exhausted, so I went upstairs and crashed. I was sound asleep at 4:30 a.m. when a 6.7 earthquake gripped the San Fernando Valley for 20 seconds that felt like 2 hours. I huddled on the bed for another 25 minutes as aftershocks rumbled through the house. I heard things falling and breaking, and then I heard the front door. "Mayte! Mayte!" "I'm up here!" I called back, because I was frozen in place, terrified to step into the dark. He bounded up the stairs and pulled me into the kind of hard hug where you feel muscles and bones. He kissed my face and neck, asking over and over, "Are you all right? Are you hurt?" "I'm okay. What's happening out there?" "It's bad," he said. "Light poles were falling. I couldn't get through. There's no cell service. I was so worried about you." The next day we flew out of poor beat-up LA, back to Minnesota, a place that gets cold but remains firmly in place. On the way home, we watched the video from the Glam Slam show again. "I'm impressed," he said. "I want you to do this in Miami." I was excited about that until he told me the first step was for me to fly down there and fire everyone currently playing and dancing there. I did not want to be that person, but this was an opportunity for me to step out of his shadow a little and take a leadership role in creating something very cool. Besides, I already had a secret plan to rehire most of the dancers after I fired them. I arrived in Glam Slam, Miami a few weeks later with a forced smile on my face and did what had to be done. When the dirty work was over, I went to work on a show for a celebration of Symbol's first birthday on June 7, 1994. Nona Gay hosted a simulcast at the LA Glam Slam while we performed live in Miami. He didn't fall back on any of the old Prince music for this event. It was all about the new music he was creating as Symbol. Fresh, fire-in-the-belly funk for the most part. The night of the birthday party, about 1,000 people milled in the street outside the club. Advance ticket sales were big. Unfortunately, fake ticket sales were even bigger. The situation got real as people realized not everyone was going in. Fights broke out and several people were arrested for disorderly conduct. At midnight, security just stepped back and waved everybody in. When my friend and I saw what was happening, we just looked at each other like, here goes nothing, and stepped out on the stage. Hold on to your wigs, he said, and the place went crazy. In January 1995, Prince received the American Music Award of Merit. It was a huge honor for him and a major performance for new power generation. But beyond all that, it gave Symbol a chance to put Prince to bed, as he put it. He was proud of everything he'd accomplished as Prince, but by now he was fully invested in this reinvention of himself. He wanted to play live, but the show organizers wouldn't let him. They wanted him to lip-sync so there'd be no surprises and because of union laws. I'm not going to fake it, he said. If they want lip-sync, I'm not using a microphone. He took pride in the fact that he wasn't pretending, but he was still going to deliver a stellar performance for the live audience and the millions of people watching. You can see on the video that he's brazenly chewing gum, as if to say, yeah, we all know I'm not singing right now, but look at this. This performance was entirely about the visual. The Purple Medley, directed by Jamie King, involved multimedia technology, a giant staircase, glowing rock walls, fireworks, and Tommy Barbarella flying through the air playing the Purple Acts as the climax of a live show that would be broadcast all over the planet. 50 dancers, many of them from my Glam Slam show, rehearsed in LA while the new power generation rehearsed at Paisley Park. At dress rehearsal the day of the show, he pulled me aside and said, "Tell everybody not to go full on during the rehearsal. The censors are watching to see if we do anything offensive." He nodded to a woman who was sitting out front. Narrow eyes, straight mouth, uptight, definitely had the look of a censor. We rehearsed the whole thing, modifying the moves or just standing there during the parts that might have been deemed borderline. We left out the part where the backup dancers whipped off their panties, but she did not look like she was buying it. Before we took our places for the live broadcast, we gathered in his dressing room to pray, as we always did. But as everyone else headed for the stage, he caught my wrist and said, "Hold up." Opening his ever-present black bag, he pulled out a huge wad of cash and handed it to me. "Stuff this in your bra. I want you to pull it out and count it. You'll know when." I took the cash and tucked it into the front of my shirt. "Do I get to keep it?" "Nope." Nona Gay introduced him, reading the inscription on the award he was about to receive. He has proven himself the ultimate show person, a daring composer, lyricist, an electrifying singer, performer, an outstanding arranger, musician, master of more than 24 instruments, a visionary producer, creator of 14 platinum albums, a motion picture star, an entertainment entrepreneur. Hard guitar chords opened the door for the Dancers Company, and Carmen Electra, I almost forgot. Everybody was all out there, panties to the breeze. After a medley of Prince hits, there was a light change. The backdrop was lettered in Gothic print. Prince, 1958 to 1993. A woman's voice. "Welcome to the dawn. You have just accessed the gold experience." A man's voice. On June 7th, 1993, Prince departed from this earth, his name changed legally to an unpronounceable symbol. Ladies and gentlemen, the artist formerly known as Prince. People went nuts when they saw him dancing at the top of the staircase. It took them a minute to realize that wasn't him. It was that ingenious moment of reveal he always crafted for a live show. He'd actually been lying flat on the floor with a black sheet over him. He'd been brought on, hiked over the shoulder of one of the dancers early in the medley, and because the move was repeated by several other dancers, no one noticed. He sat up abruptly, swung his leg around to a split, scissored up to his feet as if gravity ain't no thing, slicked his hair back, and launched into Billy Jack Bitch. And he did all this with a nonchalant, gum-chewing savoir-faire that had the whole place screaming with adoration. Epic reveal, people still talk about it. I met him on the grand staircase for I Hate You, and the choreography was all lyrical romance until "Take off your clothes." Then I stripped off my skirt, and by the time it was all said and done, I'd poured water down my shirt, beaver shot the crowd with a little peekaboo between my knees, and did an inverted split with my legs in the air. A lot of stuff didn't make it onto the live broadcast, but I managed to slip a few tricks past the censors while making my ballet teacher very proud and inspiring thousands of girls to go out the next day and cut their bangs into a V just like mine. As the rest of the dancers were peeling themselves off the floor, he tipped his head close to mine and said, "Cool?" "Mm-hmm." I gave him a quick nod and a smile and stepped back so he could do the acceptance speech, which included a long list of genuine thanks to everyone from Wendy and Lisa and Sheila E. to Muhammad Ali, Joni Mitchell, and Martin Luther King Jr. There was probably some tension in the air as people wondered if he was going to make some statement about his dispute with Warner Brothers. But his parting words was a pointed comment. To everyone sweating NPG's financial bankroll, I pulled the cash out of my bra and started counting it. "Like an Eskimo," he said. "Chill, it's all good. Peace and be wild." Meanwhile, work continued. When I get sick or exhausted, the first thing to go is my voice. I can hold up as a dancer longer and stronger than I never could as a singer. I was starting to get scratchy while we rehearsed in Denmark during the summer of 1995 and was full-on barking as we went on to perform in Germany, London, Italy, and Spain. Nonetheless, I loved being out promoting, finally feeling like a full-fledged member of the band. I'd worked hard to come up to speed. Jazz, hip-hop, modern, lyrical, you name it. I could dance it. I felt confident and respected, and because I had such great respect for my bandmates, that meant a lot to me. We were multitasking performances and promotion, so the last week of July, he went back to LA to produce an album for someone, while Sonny, Morris, and I stayed in Barcelona to do some press for the upcoming release of the new Power Generation album, The Gold Experience. My love and I kept missing calls from each other because of the time difference. He finally caught up with me for a brief conversation, but he sounded sad and vacant, the way he did when he had a migraine. And I felt an unsettling nudge in my gut. I wished I could be there for him, mostly because he needed me, but also because I was young and insecure, and I knew there would always be someone else on hand who'd be there for him when I wasn't. "I wish we could talk longer," I said. "Do you want me to tell them?" No. Go do what you need to do." I reluctantly hung up and went up to the rooftop patio to meet Sonny and Morris, ready to do my part in the press junket. The idea is to post up in a nice-looking location where TV crews and photographers and freelancers do short interviews one after another. The whole day was booked this way, just like the day before had been booked in another city, and the following day was booked somewhere else. Sonny and Morris are so hilarious, they made it fun, and I was good at playing the girl, but I couldn't shake this weird feeling. I told Morris, "I need to go downstairs for a minute. I won't be long." I just wanted to call him back and say I love you. When I got to my room, the desk phone's red light message was blinking. It was his security dude. "Hi, it's Aaron. He wants to talk to you again. Give me a call." When I called back, Aaron put him on immediately, which was pretty unusual. He was never one to sit by the phone. That was my job. "You're supposed to be sleeping," I said. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." He was quiet for a long time, which was not unusual at all. Sometimes he just needed to sit with that connection for a little while. I was happy to do that, under normal circumstances, but I had these people waiting for me on the roof. So I said, "You know where I am, right?" "Barcelona," he said. "It's so beautiful here. And oh, they have fresh apples in the hotel lobby." That made him laugh for some reason. "I want to talk to you," I said. "But they're waiting for me. I just came down to tell you that I love you, and I'm here for you. Thank you." We hung up, but something kept me sitting there for an extra second or two, and it only took that long for the phone to ring. When I picked it up, there was a long pause, and then he said, "Will you marry me?" What? Probably not the response he was looking for, but I was kind of shocked. This wasn't something we'd discussed. I loved him, and I knew he loved me. To be honest, I'd been hoping he would ask me to move in with him, but we'd never discussed that either. I was confident we'd be together forever, but I was only 22. On the other hand, I said, "Will you marry me?" I started crying and said, "Yes, of course. Soon." "Okay. I want us to have a family." "Me too." "What kind of ring do you want?" "I have no idea." "Where are we doing this?" "No idea. None. Open to suggestions." And then came all the things you hope to tell your grandchildren someday. How we sat there for another 40 minutes of tears and I love yous, and that Mama was staying in the hotel and came to my room and we sobbed our heads off, and my makeup was beyond smeared, and that put another monkey wrench in the press thing on the roof, but who cares? Because I'd never been so happy in my whole life. Absolute, optimistic, hearts and flowers joy. That's what I would have told our grandchildren on a front porch somewhere in Minnesota. Oh, I want to believe we're out there, somewhere in the universe of all possible paths at all possible times, holding on to all that joy with a beautiful grandbaby in my arms and an acoustic guitar in his. I want to believe that this sudden proposal was because he felt a sudden rush of absence makes the heart grow fonder, and not because he was struggling with guilt or whatever. And maybe that's just the old insecurity talking, because if it was an impulse, the idea must have grown on him. He certainly never tried to backpedal, quite the opposite. He couldn't wait. By the time I got home from the press junket, he had a grand scheme in full swing. Not so much for the wedding, but for married life, including renovations at the house and at Paisley Park. He didn't want me to see any of that before the wedding, especially the bedroom, so he'd had a big round bed put in the living room by the piano downstairs. On an impulse, I bought him a wedding band in Milan, and he immediately said, "I want it." "You can't have it until the wedding," I said. "It hasn't been fitted." "I'll get it fitted. I want people to know that in my heart and mind we're already married." I didn't argue with that. A few days later, he was wearing the ring, and other than during the first part of the wedding ceremony, I didn't see him without it. I guess he thought he was being super sly having wardrobe call me. "Hi, Mayte. We're getting ready for this photo shoot with a new designer and new additions to the look, and we lost some of your measurements. What's your shoe size?" "It's 7.5. "And your hat size?" "I have a big head, like big, plus a lot of hair." "And your, ring size?" I laughed partly because it was so see-through, but also because I honestly had no idea. I'd never had a fancy ring before. One afternoon in October, he called my apartment and told me to come over. I parked in the garage, came in through the laundry room, and found a series of notes on heart-shaped paper. The first one was just an arrow pointing down the hallway. The second one said, "Message from Mayte on kitchen table." The third had an arrow pointing to a glass of port wine. "Pour a little, take a sip, and then look on the bench." I poured a little port and pretended to take a sip. I could hear him spying on me from the loft over the living room. By this time, we were both giggling. The note on the bench said, "Just relax, you'll smile 1,000 smiles." An arrow pointed me in the direction of the big round bed by the piano. The note on the bed was just a smile with an arrow pointing to some flowers and a blanket. And under the blanket was a box, and in the box was a ring, and it fit perfectly. Laughter. Tears. He was right. I smiled 1,000 smiles. I'm smiling a few more right now just thinking about it. We toured Japan for 2 weeks in January 1996, and early one morning, I woke up in the hotel room and heard him playing piano on the other side of the door. I dragged the sheet off the bed and went to sit beside him. He was so content, so sure that he was exactly where he was supposed to be, and the music he played was full of that feeling. I didn't know it at the time, but he was working on Kama Sutra, the music that would be played at our wedding. It flowed so easily from his heart to his hands, to my ear. I rested my head on his shoulder, and he kissed my head, both of us wise enough to cherish that moment. On the airplane as we flew home, he ripped pages from Vanity Fair and Vogue. "Look at this dress for your sister." "Oh, okay, He decided he wanted us to get married on Valentine's Day in Paris. We couldn't make that happen on such short notice, But he was fixed on that date and wanted me to find a wedding planner who could figure out a way to make it happen in Minneapolis. We decided to get married in a small ceremony at a church in Minneapolis, followed by a private dinner for family and close friends at Paisley Park, and then moved to the soundstage for a huge party that would include over 1,000 friends, co-workers, and devoted fans. When I got home, I interviewed wedding planners and hired the one who stressed me out the least. When she asked me about my vision for the wedding, I said, "Well, I always wanted a long train, and for my dad to wear his uniform." "Good." She looked at me expectantly. And, wow, that's all I got. Never thought about it. Apparently my fiancé had thought about it a lot. He chimed in with specifics for everything from flowers to flower girls. There would be 7. We had a casting call. Yep, you heard that correctly. We had a casting call for our flower girls. And yeah, I get the rock and roll fantasy over-the-topness of that, but I was moved by how much he cared about every detail of this wedding. It was a work of art, not a show for an audience. There were very few people there. He wanted us to have this beautifully orchestrated memory in our own heads. The rich visuals were important to him, because the memory of it all was a gift he wanted to give me, along with music he was working on. He kept the songs closely guarded so I would hear them in the perfect setting. The reveal. The audience he was playing to was me, the me of that moment, and the grandmother me. The old woman who would look back and tell her granddaughters on their wedding days how she was greatly, artistically, lavishly loved by their grandpa. He'd come home from the studio all excited like a kid, singing, "Wait till you hear." "What? I'm going over there." "No, you're not." "Yes, I am." He'd go up a third, "No, you're not," and then go higher and higher, "No, you're not, no, you're not," until we were both laughing. While all this was going on, work went on as usual at Paisley Park, including my album project, Child of the Sun. This wasn't something I asked to be involved in. It came about because of a show we had done in Spain the year before. After a long, crazy concert of amazing songs, dances, and love, he was preparing for the encore while I went out and worked the crowd, tossing out tambourines and saying hi to fans. They started chanting, "Mayte, Mayte, Mayte," and they didn't stop, even when he came back out on stage. After a minute or so, he looked at them, looked at me, and then leaned in to shout over the noise, "You need to do an album." "No, I don't," I shouted back. "You're doing an album." That was the whole discussion. Within weeks, it was in the works. I loved him all the more for being so supportive, but my calling was to dance. And as I evolved as an artist, I was getting more and more interested in directing and editing, which strikes me as a natural progression because it's all about rhythm and motion and technical precision. Just like dance, it transforms the emotional into the visual. The album, Child of the Sun, was released by MPG in Europe later that year. It was actually a lot of fun. We did a duet, However Much You Want, which was the first song I ever sang in the studio and was written with me in mind. I did a gender-bend version of The Most Beautiful Girl in the World, The Most Beautiful Boy in the World, and then he came in to put a new spin on the Commodore's Brick House. The cover has me in full-on golden Egyptian goddess mode, though we didn't discover the hidden significance of the title track, Children of the Sun, until years later. Just before the album dropped, he wrote to me, "Dearest darling, I'm listening to a remastered version of your album. It's deeper and louder, much better. Kirk did it in LA. You have the cutest voice. It's your album now. Anything you don't like or want to fix, you can. I'll give you the money. Forgive me for being so distant. I'm just burnt on the studio and the routine of recording. 16 years of it. I guess I'm ready for a change. World tour, new clothes, new money, hairstyle, car, house. I'm ready to be Symbol. I'm sure you understand. Every rainstorm passes. Every earthquake stops. Every night brings morning. Please don't ever doubt my love for you. I love you with my soul. No one has ever or will ever get close to my soul the way you have. Other women want my babies. I just find it funny. My future's all arranged. If they're not your babies, I ain't having none. I wouldn't want 'em, 'cause they were never supposed to be here. Patience is a virtue. I trust God with everything now, even you. If you stay with me, it's because I believe He wants me to be married, a huge, extravagant wedding, and have 2 angels for Him. He put together a beautiful program to hand out at the wedding and included some of the things I'd said in the hypnotic state. He wanted to share a few of the little coincidences and parallels that made us smile. There was the unlikely way we met. He never took random tapes from people and immediately watched them like that. There was the prophetic little joke he made to Rosie, and how both our fathers are named John, my mother Nellie, and his middle name Nelson, Nell's son. His mother, Maddie, so close to Mayte. When I met John Nelson, we stood in his kitchen, and he told me that I reminded him of Prince's mother. I told him that my birthday is November 12th, just 1 day off of hers, and he grunted out a brusque, "Damn it, of course." After a few years, the coincidences began to feel more like fate. He asked me to marry him on July 25th, 1995, while I was in Barcelona. I didn't connect the dots until Daddy showed me a ticket stub and pointed it out to me that the first time Prince and I saw each other was at the concert in Barcelona on July 25th, 1990. Another moment of fate and coincidence that took our breath away for a moment. There was a rehearsal the day before the wedding, and I went back to my apartment so we wouldn't see each other before the ceremony. In the wee hours of the morning, I could barely sleep from the excitement. I woke up and found Mama crying. When I asked her what was wrong, she said, "I didn't get to do anything. I never had a wedding of my own, and now, all this. I didn't help with anything. I didn't even cook or make rice or my Puerto Rican wedding cake. There's nothing for me to do." "Well, that's not true, Mama. I racked my brain trying to find something the wedding planner hadn't already covered. "You know what? I have almonds. I was thinking we should do do them up in little bags. You know how much he likes almonds, so I got them, but I haven't had time to put them on the table and make them pretty." This calmed her for the moment, and the next morning I called the planner and begged her, please find something for my mother to do. My husband-to-be called and said, "Hi." "Hi. How are you?" "I'm great. Excited," I said. He said, "Me too." I went over to the church to get dressed, and while I was having my hair done, I heard helicopters overhead. Nervously, I asked Daddy, "Do you hear that?" "Yeah, that's for you," he said. "The groom asked for a police escort," said the planner. The press caught on. My fiancé called me and said, "Don't worry about it. I have a way to get there. They won't see me." A vision of him being wheeled into the church in a roadie case crossed my mind. "I'm having a limo come over," he said, "but I'm riding in the back of the van with the flowers." That made me laugh, because he was wearing a clean, crisp, tailored white suit, and I had a hard time picturing him squatting in the back of a van among the gardenias and orchids. You could see half of his wedding suit in Holy River. It's a bolero jacket. On the back of his symbol was an M superimposed on it. I'd never seen this combination of his new name with my initial. I didn't know that he'd had it monogrammed all over our home, with china, curtains, napkins, and towels. When I walked down the aisle and saw it for the first time, I was overwhelmed. Also a bit overwhelming were the flowers. I'd ordered what I thought was a lot of them, though I did tell the wedding planner, "These columns for $300 a whack? Not happening. We're only occupying the first couple of rows in the church." Without telling me, my husband-to-be had ordered an additional $500,000 worth of flowers and had them flown in the day before the wedding. White and gold orchids, gardenias on the railings, roses in huge arrangements on pedestals. The flowers I'd budgeted with the wedding planner were pretty much a joke next to all that. After the wedding, he asked me under hypnosis if I was upset that we didn't have a big church wedding, and I told him, I'm glad there were only a few people in the church. More room for angels. Kirk's brother officiated at the ceremony, which went off perfectly, and afterward there was a private dinner at Paisley Park. I was astonished when I got there. The sleek corporate white and gray walls were painted sky blue with puffed white clouds. The purple carpet was decorated with signs of the zodiac. A kaleidoscope of colors and murals made every corner beautiful. The wall above the elevator was lettered boldly, "Elevate." I loved that and a million other small perfect details. There was nothing dull about Paisley Park before, but this was like opening the door to Oz, if Oz was serving a vegetarian meal with edible flowers. Our first dance as a married couple was one of the songs he'd been working on. Friend, lover, sister, mother, wife. Friend, lover, sister, mother, wife. Air, food, water, love of my life. After dinner, we went back to the house to change clothes for the big party on the soundstage. Gianni Versace had generously sent me a selection of dresses for the big reception, and I chose a white strapless number with the greatest turnaround skirt ever made. It was gorgeous. We got out of the car, and my husband carried me over the threshold on his shoulder like a sack of coffee beans. The house had been completely redone to make it our home. He took me by the hand and showed me every room. The foo-foo magicians had been to my apartment, packed up all my stuff, and had everything put away neatly by the time we arrived. Upstairs in an anteroom outside the master bedroom, there was a crib. He went in and queued up the other song he'd been working on. Let's Have a Baby. Too bad that gorgeous Versace dress never made it to the party.